Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm offering Mahima Ranjan Acharji to start this session as he is the uh, host of today's lecture. Please, Mahima Ranjan, unmute yourself and start.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Hi everyone. Hope you all are safe and sound in this pandemic situation. This is Mahimanandan Acharji from Octophin. Today is the last day of our live online course, Exploring Ocean, Explore the Planet Earth, Season 2. For the last 5 days, lecturers from home and abroad have presented to you some mesmerizing marine facts, basics of physical and geological oceanography, interesting marine organisms, and just yesterday we learned about climate change and its impacts on agriculture in Bangladesh. In continuation of this, our today's session is on an introduction to maritime zones. Do you know what is maritime zones? To make us familiar with the maritime zones, we are honored to have with us Mr. Faiz and Taimur sir. He is serving as a faculty member at Institute of Marine Sciences in University of Chittagong. His major areas of research interest include marine ecology, marine policy, and ocean governance, conservation of marine biodiversity, and sustainable resource management. Dear participants, hope you all will enjoy the full session. Feel free to ask all your relevant questions in the Zoom chat box. In case you are watching the recorded version, drop the question in the comment section. We will try to answer all of them. That's all about my part. So stay with us and enjoy the session. Now I am going to our today's mentor. How are you, sir?
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Sir, I am fine too. Thank you for giving us your valuable time, sir. Now I am requesting you to take the floor. Please, sir.
Okay, thank you again. So it's a lecture on the maritime zones, and I'm starting with very basic things we need to learn about maritime zones under the UNCLOS, which is the United Nations Convention for Law of the Sea. So that is the pivotal tool to understand the legal regime of maritime spaces across the globe. So uh, let's go to the slide directly. Okay, please just let me know that you are having the view of the screen.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes, sir.
Okay,
The slide is visible.
okay. So I think it's now viewable. So the title is very simple, as the lecture is very simple, because I have learned that most of the audiences are undergraduate. So this lecture will be the first step to know about the maritime zones. To govern the maritime spaces, we definitely need to know the uh, different zones, which has different jurisdiction and authorities and rights enjoyed by the states. So let's start. So I was talking about UNCLOS, the main and core legal tool of the maritime legislative regime. That is United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, uh, which was originated in 1982, and it came into being from 1994. And it is the pivotal tool, as I said, which serves as the public and customary law. It codifies the various maritime zones and their regime. Jurisdiction over maritime zones is very important and significant in terms of security, exploration, and exploitations of marine and coastal resources, uh, not only living, but also non-living resources as well. And the harmony between the states, among the states, and uh, the synchronized geopolitics in international relations and effective ocean management. So UNCLOS provides the framework for the delimitation of maritime boundaries to fix different boundaries among the coastal states and limits as well as the jurisdiction over maritime spaces. So according to UNCLOS, the ocean space can be divided into 6 major zones that allow the certain rights to the coastal state, and it carries certain obligations to the foreign states and vessels as well. So by knowing about these zones and understanding their legal aspects, the state can enjoy or exercise their rights, and they can provide spaces to other states in terms of their legal provision provided by UNCLOS and relevant international legal tools. So the 6 maritime zones are internal waters, territorial sea, contiguous zone, exclusive economic zone or EEZ, then continental shelf, and high seas and the area. So high seas and the area is beyond the national jurisdiction. That means the state don't have any exclusive rights over these areas, but the states can enjoy different kinds of freedoms and the resource utilization through different international treaties and regional cooperations. Uh, I'm going to discuss those about later. So these maritime zones are basically measured by using nautical miles. The unit is nautical mile, and which is roughly equal to 1.852 kilometers on land. So this is the basic diagram of all these uh, maritime zones we are going to discuss about. So the internal waters is ranged uh, in the landward side of the baseline. Baseline is very important for uh, understanding the zones in the maritime spaces. Excuse me just for a second, please. Sorry. Okay, I'm back. Uh, then the territorial sea is here, and it is measured from baseline, and all other zones are also measured from this baseline. So to get idea about the maritime zones, we need to know about the baseline first. So that is the most fundamental thing we are going to discuss about. Uh, I'm proceeding on. Uh, we'll discuss later about this diagram step by step. So now let's have a look on baseline. A baseline is the line from which the seaward limits of a coastal state's territorial sea and certain other maritime zones of jurisdiction are measured. Uh, in simpler way, baseline is a imaginary line or borderline which demarcates the land area and the ocean area. So normally a sea baseline follows the low water line. So low water line is the borderline uh, of the water level during the low tide. Okay, so during the low tide, the borderline is termed as the low water line or mean. It is measured by the mean low water level along the coast. And when the coastline is deeply indented, as we know that, or we have seen that the coastline is not always smooth. There are coastlines with very deeply indented and with having fringing islands, very rugged indentation, or there are some coast, those are highly unstable. There are erosion or accretion are so frequent due to strong water dynamics along the coast. So in those cases, straight baselines may be used. So from this discussion, we understand that there are two kinds of baseline. One is normal baseline and another one is straight baseline. So normal baseline is the baseline which follows the low water mark or mean low tide water level along the coast as marked on charts recognized by the coastal state. And straight baselines are drawn in localities if there is a deeply indented coastline or a fringe islands along the coast by joining appropriate points. So let's have a look. So this is the diagram for the normal baseline. In the left hand side, we can see the land area, and the first dashed line is the baseline, which is the low water line. That means during the low tide, the water levels uh, remains along this line. So the mean water level, mean low water level or low water line will be treated as the baseline of any coastal state. So beyond the baseline, landward, the water body is called internal water, which is the coastal bay, coastal lakes or river mouths are termed as internal water or tidal pool as well. So from that baseline, we will measure other maritime zones. So the water body adjacent to the sea, which is beyond the baseline, uh, I mean, towards the land, that is called internal water. And towards the sea, the first zone is called territorial sea, and which is measured by 12 nautical mile from the baseline. And then the contiguous zone, then exclusive economic zone, and beyond exclusive economic zone, it is high sea. So this is the case. We can see that the coastline is mostly smooth, not very rugged or not very fringed or broken. But in case of such coastline where there are many indentation or broken broken coastline, so in such cases, the baseline, it is really tough to draw a baseline along the broken coast. So precision cannot be made by normal baseline in such type of coasts. So in these sort of cases, we use the straight baselines where some prominent points in the coastline are selected, and those prominent points are uh, joined by the straight lines, and these straight lines are treated as the baseline, and from these straight baseline the maritime zones are measured. So we can take the example uh, of Bangladesh territorial sea baseline, as we have uh, both the baselines, I mean the straight baselines and the normal baselines. So along the southeastern coast, we see that from Cox's Bazar and southward, the coast is almost smooth. So here the baseline follows along with the coast. That's why the baseline, the red mark, is almost not visible because it is with the green land border, I mean coastal border. Whereas along the Sundarbans and our Meghneshwari, this coast is very much fringed and indented. That's why from the land boundary terminal in the boundary with India, we used the straight baseline. And here's the first point is the LBT, that is land boundary terminal, then Patni Island, then here is the Dakshin Bhashanchar, and another point is Labani Point at Cox's Bazar. So this coastal zone is demarcated by straight baselines, whereas from Cox's Bazar to St. Martin's, we made the baseline along the coast, which is normal baseline. So I think it's now clear uh, what normal baseline and straight baseline used for. So there are some basic criteria for drawing the straight baselines. Uh, I'm just reading those out. The appropriate points, as I said, some prominent points to be selected, and those appropriate points should be joined with straight lines. Along the furthest seaward extent of the low water line, where the coastline is highly unstable due to the presence of a delta or other natural conditions, as we said already. The drawing of straight baselines must not depart to any significant extent from the general direction of the coast, and the sea areas lying within the lines must be closely linked to the land domain. So when we are going to select the appropriate points or some prominent points, we should follow the coastal direction. We cannot make some points farthest from the land. Like if we go back to this map, we cannot connect this LBT point to Saint Martin with a single straight line. We have to follow the course of the coast. So you have to be judicial to demarcate or to select the points which you are going to add by the straight baselines. So uh, you should be logical. Sorry, you should be logical and rational in selecting this sort of points. So as I said, you cannot just cannot add LBT to St. Martin's or LBT to directly Cox's Bazar a straight line. You have to follow the course of the coast. So that's what it is stated here. Straight baselines shall not be drawn to and from low tide elevations except having international recognition or containing lighthouses or similar installations thereon, which are permanently above sea level. So it should be, baselines should be followed by the natural coastal line or natural uh, coastal uh, natural coastal features, not from lighthouse or any artificial installation along the coast. And here is another thing, low tide elevations. Low tide elevations are some sporadic lands. Those are not islands, but they are like some small land pieces which are submerged and inundated during the high tide, but they are visible during the low tide. So in Bangladesh, we have an example of that kind of low tide elevation in St. Martin's Island, which is called Cheradia or Cheradip. So we observed that along the Cheradip coast, there are some land masses which are totally submerged during the high tide when the water is high, and during low tide, when the water goes down, it becomes visible. So straight baselines cannot be drawn from those low tide elevations. And another criteria is a straight baseline will not be applied if it cuts off the territorial sea or exclusive economic zone of another state. So it is very obvious that if it collide or coincide with another sort of maritime zones, it should not be applied in such cases. So if there's any coincidence, if it with other maritime zones of other states, there should be other means of or other measures of uh, delimitation of these baselines. So now we are going to uh, have some ideas on the maritime zones. Those 6 maritime zones. The first one was internal waters. As I said previously, internal waters mean the waters on the landward side of the baseline of territorial sea of the state, such as lakes, rivers, salt marshes, tidal pools. And it are considered part of the state's territory, and the coastal state exercises full sovereignty over them. So in the internal waters, a state or a country has the full authority, full jurisdiction, and full-fledged sovereignty over these lakes and rivers. Any other vessels from other states cannot intrude in the internal water of any state. So we can exercise, a state can exercise the full sovereignty and enjoy all the rights uh, applicable in the state's jurisdiction. So there is no right to innocent passage of other states through internal waters of the coastal state. Only they can approach to the ports for their commercial and innocent passage of the vessels. Okay. There is no other way other states' vessels can encroach in internal waters. So, and then the next zone, this internal waters is in the landward side of the baseline. And other maritime zones are, all 5 zones are seaward from the baseline. So territorial sea is a belt of coastal waters extending at most 12 nautical miles from the baseline of a coastal state. Then every state has the right to establish the breadth of its territorial sea up to a limit not exceeding 12 nautical miles measured from the baselines. So, territorial sea means this water body is part of the territory, is part of the state territory or the land mass. So, here a state can enjoy the full sovereignty of that state. And all the legal instruments of that state and national legislations will be applied in territorial sea. The sovereignty of a coastal state extends beyond its land territory and internal waters and to the adjacent territorial sea. And this sovereignty also extends to the airspace over the territorial sea as well as to its bed and subsoil. That means a state has all kind of authority over the water body of territorial sea and subsoil. That means the sediment and the uh, adjacent soil adjacent to the water and the airspace. That means uh, across the territorial sea, no aircraft can cross or can encroach without any prior permission or special consent. So the airspace is also uh, uh, under the jurisdiction of that state. So that is the rights of the territorial sea enjoyed by the state. And how we are going to delimitate the territorial sea, as we said, along the coast, we need to point or need to select some prominent points, some significant points. So mostly the seaward uh, features are prominent here to get the most of the territorial sea and its limit. So here we see there are some points, and from those points we draw the arc with a radius of 12 nautical mile, uh, and the arc crisscrosses with each other. Then top of the arcs, we we make an envelope to demarcate the outer limit of the territorial sea, and the arcs are then erased. So this mark is the outer limit of territorial sea. We can show it again. Here are some prominent points, small circles along the coast. Then we are drawing the arcs having this 12 nautical mile radius. We draw some arcs here, and the outer limit of the arcs are denoted by a thick line, and that is the outer limit of territorial sea. So this is the territorial sea, and within this space or sea, a state can enjoy uh, the rights and sovereignty provide the UNCLOS. And the next maritime zone is the contiguous zone, which is adjacent to the territorial sea, and where the coastal state may exercise the control necessary to prevent infringement of its customs, fiscal or financial, immigration, and sanitary laws and regulations within its territory or territorial sea. So the contiguous zone is just an extension of the territorial sea to facilitate the legal activities and other management approaches and measures, it is an extended portion where the coastal state can enjoy their authority to manage or prevent the violation regarding customs or excises, uh, any illegal activities, uh, illegal immigration, or human trafficking or smuggling, or sanitary laws which are related to prevention of uh, the uh, polluting the water or adjacent ecosystems. So to manage and regulate these things, one state can enjoy its rights, and it can extend its jurisdiction uh, in the contiguous zone, which is an the extension of the territorial sea. And they also can punish infringement or violation of such laws and regulations committed within its territory or territorial sea. So the contiguous zone may not extend beyond 24 nautical miles from the baselines from which the breadth of territorial sea is measured. So it is very clear that the contiguous zone is another 12 nautical mile from the territorial sea outer limit, whereas it is measured from the baseline, not from the outer limit of the territorial sea. So, but roughly we can say that the contiguous zone is another 12 nautical mile. If we just have a look at the picture again, we see here the territorial sea is 12 nautical mile, and contiguous zone is also 12 nautical mile, but it is not uh, the same always. I mean, there are some exceptions when we demarcate the territorial sea. So the contiguous zone is again measured from this baseline, and which is not more than 24 nautical mile. But simply we can say the territorial sea is 12 nautical mile and contiguous zone is also 12 nautical mile. But we should keep it in mind that contiguous zone is also measured from the baseline, not from the outer limit of territorial sea. It is measured from the baseline, and the maximum extent of contiguous zone is 24 nautical mile. If we calculate this, or if we just want to have a rough estimate beyond the territorial sea, yes, there is a breadth of 12 nautical mile of contiguous zone where we can exercise some specific sovereign rights, uh, which is under the jurisdiction of UNCLOS, provided by UNCLOS to the states. Then after the contiguous zone, uh, exclusive economic zone. So in exclusive economic zone, the coastal state doesn't have the full sovereignty, but they have some sovereign rights to explore and exploit the zone for its economic and ecological benefit. An exclusive economic zone is adjacent to the territorial sea, and it may not extend beyond 1200 nautical miles from the baseline. Again, it is measured from the baseline, not from the outer limit of the territorial sea. So we have to measure it from the baseline. In the exclusive economic zone, the coastal state has sovereign rights for the purpose of exploring and exploiting, conserving and managing the natural resources, both living and non-living, and the jurisdiction to establish artificial islands or installations and to conduct scientific research. These are the rights of the state in exclusive economic zone of a state. And the coastal state is responsible for the protection of marine environment, like announcing marine protected areas and such. Uh, and they have exclusive rights to engage offshore energy like wind, current, and waves within their exclusive economic zone. And the Article 56 of UNCLOS also allows states to establish and use artificial islands, installation, and structures, as said earlier, conduct marine scientific research, and protect and preserve marine environment through announcing marine protected areas, as well as other relevant management and legal tools uh, to ensure the sustainable utilization of the resources. So, if we look at the diagram, we see the 200 nautical mile is measured from the baseline, but the whole area from baseline is not exclusive economic zone. Exclusive economic zone starts right after the territorial sea, and the contiguous zone is also starts from the outer limit of the territorial sea. So the contiguous zone is a part of the exclusive economic zone as well. Okay, so uh, not to be confused, that the contiguous zone is a part of exclusive economic zone. So the breadth of exclusive economic zone is not 200 nautical mile. 200 nautical mile is the measurement of exclusive economic zone from baseline. But the breadth of exclusive economic zone is 200 nautical mile minus territorial sea. Or roughly, you can say that 200 nautical mile minus 12 nautical mile equal to 188 nautical mile. But officially, we do not claim that the exclusive economic zone is 188 nautical mile. There is a reason, because there are different kinds of special features. For those special features, territorial sea, when we measure territorial sea, it can be different from this range of 12 nautical mile. It can be less than 12 nautical mile. It can also be more than 12 nautical mile in such special cases. But the exclusive economic zone is not dependent of that special case of the territorial sea, as it is again measured from the baseline. So it has no relation with any exception of the territorial sea. There are some cases where the territorial sea can be delimited with special consideration. So in such case, if the territorial sea is 14 nautical mile, it may be for some reasons. If it is 14 nautical mile, you will, or the state will not have any exception in case of measuring the exclusive economic zone. So in that case, the exclusive economic zone will be measured uh, with a 200 nautical mile breadth from the baseline. So in that case, I mean, in the special case, say for example, if the territorial sea is 14 nautical mile, we'll get the exclusive economic zone 186, because the territorial sea is no more 12 nautical mile. So exclusive economic zone, it is for measurement, it depends on baseline, but it ranges from outer limit of the territorial sea to the outer limit of the exclusive economic zone. Okay, I think I have made it clear. Then another extent starts, another maritime zone under the national jurisdiction that is called continental shelf. So, uh, according to the law of the sea, continental shelf is different from the definition of geological continental shelf, or what we have uh, already known in geographic studies or oceanographic studies. So the continental shelf usually is a of a coastal state comprises the seabed and subsoil of the submarine areas that extend beyond its territorial sea throughout the natural prolongation of its land territory to the outer edge of the continental margin. So what is the continental margin? So we know that this seaward extension is geologically formed as the seabed slopes away from the coast. From the coast, we have a slope towards the water, which is called, uh, which is a gradual slope and which is called continental shelf. Then there is a steep slope, which is called continental slope, and then a more gradual slope leading to the deep seabed floor. Again, the graduation is decreased and the slope is decreased, and it goes on with a moderate and flat slope uh, along the seabed. So these three areas collectively known as the continental margin, which is rich in natural resources, including uh, different kinds of minerals, natural gas, oil, and different kinds of living resources as well. There are, and the economic rights within the continental shelf extend only to non-living resources and sedentary living resources. That means, such as shellfish, those are uh, totally sedentary. It means that uh, a coastal state can enjoy fisheries or fishing its living resources of the water up to the outer limit of exclusive economic zone, not beyond that. Beyond that, they can claim the continental shelf, but the right is limited to the subsoil and the submarine sediments only, where they can extract the mineral resources, and they can manage or exploit the living resources which are completely sedentary, which are totally benthic. Okay, and it also allows the coastal state to build artificial islands, installation on structures for mining, for exploring or exploiting the mineral resources therein. So how we are going to delimitate the continental shelf? There are some formula to demarcate the lines. So there are two formulas. The state can choose any one formula which is more appropriate or more beneficial for the particular state. Number one formula is bathymetric formula. There's line 60 nautical miles seaward from foot of the slope. Okay. Uh, where the continental slope ends, there is a point. It is geologically selected area. This is called foot of slope or foot of the continental slope, where the continental slope ends. So in this diagram, uh, we are denoting a point which is termed as the foot of slope. So any state which want to claim their continental shelf, they can claim the extent more 60 nautical mile from that foot of slope. That is formula 1. And formula 2 is the sediment thickness formula. A state can determine its extended continental shelf line up to a distance where the sediment thickness becomes less than 1% of that distance. So this is a bit of complicated. Okay, let's have a look here. This is the crust, which is very hard uh, and comprised of different kinds of hard rocks on which the sediments are deposited throughout the geological time scale, and the sediment is deposited on the crust. So this is the sediment thickness from the seabed uh, to the level where the crust is there. So this is the sediment. We can see that this light color portion is the sediment, and this is the thickness, the vertical distance. The vertical distance is the thickness. So from the foot of slope, if someone travels to some extent, a state, if a state goes for this formula 2, they have to select a particular distance at which this sediment thickness is is equal to or less than 1% of this traveled distance. Okay, this distance and this sediment, when the thickness become the distance becomes 1% of or less of this distance. If we just say, for example, if the traveled distance is 100 kilometer from this foot of slope and the thickness is less than 1 kilometer, at that point you can, or that state can mark their uh, limit of continental shelf. So these are the two rules uh, to mark the lines. One is just 60 nautical mile line from the foot of slope. Another is a certain distance at which the sediment thickness uh, become uh, equal to or less than 1% of that distance. So these are two provisions. The state can choose any one, and then they uh, and the state has to limit the extent of that mark by the maximum range, because geologically it can go further from the coast, and in some places it can be less than uh, the farthest distance. So there is a limit. You cannot go as long as you find that thickness or something like that. So there are maximum limits. You can go maximum limit with either 350 nautical mile from the baseline, that is the maximum limit of the continental shelf line, or another maximum limit is 100 nautical mile from the 250-meter isobath. 250-meter isobath is a distance from the coast where the water depth, where the depth of water that particular area is 250 meter. Okay, so this extent is uh, denoted, or this extent of this distance is selected by the point at which the water depth is 2500 meter. So that is the 2500 meter isobath. which is a bathymetric profile. From that isobath, this is that 2500 meter isobath. So from this isobath, you can extend extra 100 nautical mile. So this is one option, and another option is from baseline you can go up to 350 nautical mile. Please look at the unit here. Here the range is 2500 meter isobath, where to 2500 meter is not the distance, it is the water depth. At a distance where the water depth is 2500 meter. So you can add 100 nautical mile from this isobath or this isobath line, or uh, you can mark the line from measuring from the baseline. So these are the maximum lines. First, you have to choose the formula 1 or formula 2. Then you have to determine the maximum range of your continental shelf, extent of the continental shelf, and that would be the extent of continental shelf of coastal state. Beyond that, the seabed area is called the area, and the area is spelled by the capital A. You will whenever you consult or you go through the UNCLOS and other legislative tools, you will see the area is spelled with a capital A always. So that is the area, and beyond the exclusive economic zone, the water body is called the high seas. So here are the definitions. The ocean surface and the water column beyond the exclusive economic zone are referred to as the high seas. The high seas are open to all states, whether coastal or landlocked, but this area is not under any state's national jurisdiction. The state can enjoy the freedom under the regional and international legal tools and provisions. So, and they are open to all states, uh, coastal, whether coastal or landlocked. Freedom of the high seas is exercised under the conditions laid down by UNCLOS, and the freedoms are navigation, overflight, installation of submarine cables and pipeline, uh, construction of artificial islands and other installations, fishing, and scientific research. These are the six exclusive freedoms provided by the UNCLOS to the coastal states. And seabed beyond the coastal states EEZ or exclusive economic zones and continental shelf claims is known as the area. So area is the seabed area. It is not the water body. The water body beyond exclusive economic zone is termed as high seas, and these both high seas and area are beyond national jurisdiction. A state doesn't have any direct jurisdiction or authority of these zones. These zones and areas are governed by international agencies, like the area or international seabed is governed by the International Seabed Authority or ISA, where high seas is governed by UNCLOS. It in the UNCLOS it has a separate it has separate part to discuss about the jurisdiction rights and other things. So the area is considered the common heritage of all mankind. So the resources are supposed to be exploited for all the states and the whole mankind all over the world. It is not a particular property or particular jurisdiction of any particular region or state. And obviously, it is beyond any national jurisdiction. States can conduct activities in the area so long as they are for peaceful purposes such as transit, marine science, and undersea exploration. So, if we just have a look at this, we can say again that the landward water bodies beyond baseline is called the internal waters. From baseline, maximum 12 nautical mile breadth uh, ocean space is called as territorial sea, and the extended part of that territorial sea, which is measured from baseline up to 24 nautical mile, is called contiguous zone. Exclusive economic zone is measured from the baseline up to 200 nautical mile, but it starts from the territorial sea. If we look at the arrow, we'll get the clearer idea. And the continental shelf, one coastal state can claim they extend beyond the exclusive economic zone, the area of continental shelf, and we have already discussed on which criteria they can claim their continental shelf area. And beyond the continental shelf, the seabed and subsoil is called the area, and beyond the exclusive economic zone, the water body or water column with its surface is called high seas. So that's all about the maritime zones. It is not all, but I think the start how to discuss or how to consult about the maritime zones. So that's for now. And thank you all. Over to you, the host. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for explaining what the maritime zones are, why they are important, and why should we care in such an informative and equally interesting way. Dear audience, I believe we learn something best when the method is interactive. Till now, you've been hearing from our side. It's now time to turn the table. Welcome to the question and assessment session, everyone. I am Sanjila Sharmin Orna from Octophin, and I'm going to ask your questions on your behalf to our today's lecturer. So, to start with, Shukumar asked why EEZ is called so. Over to you, Professor.
Uh, I'm not sure about the question. Can you please repeat?
Sure. Why EEZ is called so.
It's called so. It is called economic exclusive zone. This zone is exclusively provided for economic benefit and ecological benefit as well. As a coastal state can exploit the resources from this particular zone. It can collect the fisheries resources. It can collect mineral resources from the water and subsoil and seabed in this zone. So definitely this zone is very much important for economic growth for any coastal state. That's why, and this particular zone is exclusively uh, mm, provided for exploitation for that particular state. That's why it is called exclusive economic zone. And in this zone, other states are not allowed to extract any natural resources without any prior consent of that particular coastal state. That's why it's exclusive economic zone.
Thank you, Professor. The next question is from Nayan Jyoti Roy, who wants to know what is the role of water house?
What is the role of
Water house.
water house?
Yes,
Did I
Professor.
mention anything like that? Water house? I'm not sure. I didn't mention anything about water house in this discussion.
Okay, sir. So I think we should move on to the
Maybe
next one.
it is maybe another word or anything else. So Waterhouse, I haven't mentioned anything regarding Waterhouse.
I think the questioner got it wrong then, sir. Then we'll move on to the next question.
Yes.
Shukumar asked, coastline is highly unstable due to presence of delta. He didn't understand this sentence. Could you explain, please?
Okay. In the delta, we know that geologically there are, I mean, in the delta where the river opens in the sea, that is the mouth of the river, and the delta are the floodplain, which is formed by deposited sediments for a very long time, and the dynamics due to the dynamics of the water, erosion and accretion, this kind of landmass changes go on in course of time. So the land masses change, and even if we take the example from our country, I mean Bangladesh. So it is a deltaic plain, and in the delta, the landmass is always uh, in a brink of changes, either by erosion or accretion of further lands. So that's why uh, if for a changing coastline, it is difficult to select prominent points, or it is difficult to draw the low water line for normal baseline. So that's why the straight baselines are more appropriate for denoting the baseline of the maritime zones, as we saw in the uh, coastal zone of Bangladesh, which was shown in the presentation already.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Nibir, who's asking why it's called delimitation, because every substances has a limit, doesn't it?
Delimitation is the process of selecting the limit. So when we are making some zones, or terming some zones, we have to define the limit or the boundary. So this is the process of setting the boundary of limit. When we are going to discuss about the territorial sea, we have to make a boundary or outer limit of the territorial sea. Same thing goes for the exclusive economic zone and the continental shelf as well. So delimitation is the setting of the boundary of the zones.
Thank you. The next question is from Nibir as well. He asked happens if what happens if anyone enter contiguous zones and try to cross it.
Okay, in that case, the law enforcing agencies of the coastal state can seize the vessel, if that is a vessel, and can seize the vessel and capture it, and they can bring the vessel and the crew of the vessel under their national jurisdiction, or their legislative processes by which they can file any case against the insurgent.
Thank you. Next, can any nation harvest living resources from high sea? This question is from Nayanjoti Roy.
Can you repeat it?
Sure. Can any nation harvest living resources from high sea?
Yes, from high sea, the states can extract or harvest, but there has to be any particular agreement or treaty. And this kind of treaty can be bilateral, can be regional among different states, or it is consented or permitted by any international authority which are relevant to the governance of the ocean. Okay, like if I go for an example, uh, in regionally, uh, there are some commitment or some treaties, or it's like contracts or understanding among the states, among the coastal states, so in particular region, so they can go for fishing and harvesting uh, uh, in the high seas, and they can share the resources among themselves, but it should be permitted by the particular or rightful authority.
Hello, Orna. Are you here? Is there any problem?
I think there is
Well,
a
I
problem with
think
the
she's
connection.
not here.
Thank you, sir.
Her
Next, Shalini wants called historic water. What are historic? Yes.
Can you repeat that?
well,
Am I audible?
yes,
Now,
yes.
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think there was a network problem.
Okay.
So Shalini asked, in some places she sees there is a park zone called historic water. What is historic water?
Okay. Historic waters are the parts of water. It can be in the territorial sea, it can be in exclusive economic zone, which are historically used by the state uh, for long time, and it has a heritage and a traditional significance of that particular state or the nation. Even they may have some ethnic value or ethnic significance regarding that particular water body. So for that, there are some historic significance. As the convention is not very old, it is commissioned in 82, and it came into being in 94. So there are different kinds of practices and uses by the states which are termed as historic, and those water bodies have historic values. In such case of historic significance of water bodies, there are some provisions of exceptions for uh, delimiting of any maritime zones like territorial sea or exclusive economic zone. There are exceptions. Like in South China Sea, there are different claims between so China uh, and other adjacent countries like Vietnam and Philippines. So they have some historical claims which are still under process and which are not solved yet due to overlapping claims, uh, overlapping claims of the states and their historic events. So these water parts are called historic water.
Thank you, sir. The final question is from Amelia Lopez, who wants to know what is the difference between delta and estuary. I think she meant estuary, sir.
Okay. Uh, Delta is estuary, is the opening of a river or any, it can be any enclosed water body as well, where delta is mm, uh, more of dominated by the sedimentary deposit along the way of the water, water flow or river flow. That is the basic difference between a delta and estuary.
Thank you, sir. We are getting so many questions. I think we could easily run this session for another 2 hours, but I think it's wise to stop here. Mr. Faizan
Okay,
Taimur, sir, thank you, and we express our gratitude to you for sharing your valuable time and knowledge with us. And also,
okay,
dear audience, thank you for being with us till this time. As you know, today is the last day of our course, so I'm inviting our founder, Jahin Khandokar, for some closing remarks. Thank you.
okay,
Thank you, Orna
I,
Sanjila.
okay.
Sir, do you want to say something?
Okay, I think I see many students from my institute. So I'm eager to respond all the questions as there are time limit. If possible, you can just redirect the questions to me so that I can respond at my convenience later.
Yes, yes,
if
we
if
will.
anybody is interested to know anything particular, because the discussion was just a surface discussion. So there are many things to discuss and clarify regarding these zones. So I'll be glad to respond or address any interesting question. So can you just store the questions and
Yes,
redirect to me later?
yes,
That's
sir.
all. That's
We
all
will
from my side.
send the
And
questions if they are willing to ask you.
yeah,
We will supply them to. We will supply the answers.
yes, you
Well,
may.
thank you, sir. Well,
Yes. So from my side, I'm going to just end my part. Uh, I'd like to thank you all for organizing this session, and thank you all the participants, and all the best wishes for you all. Thank you very
well,
much.
thank you very much, sir. Thanks for your cooperation and thanks for this informative and lively session, actually. Well, now I'm going to talk with the participants. First of all, I'm extremely sorry that we can't take our last class, but no worries. We will add this lecture in our next course. So everyone is invited to the next course. It will start from March or April. Well, there is an important announcement about the exam of this course. It will be taken from our website, octophin.org. The link for the exam will be given in your email, and also the instruction manual will be provided. Well, you have to maintain this instruction manual strictly, because this time everything will be done automatically, even the certification, and you will get only one chance to submit in your given time. The exam date is fixed at 14th December. Thank you, dear participants, for being with us, not only today, but also for the past 5 days. I am Jahin Khandakar, the founder and present president of Octophin. This was the second course arranged by Octophin, and just like the first one, this too was absolutely free. We have tried our best to make you more familiar with the defining feature of our beloved planet Earth, the oceans. We are grateful that you have stayed with us all along and made our effort so meaningful. But as we Octophins always say, our aim is not to make you an ocean expert. Instead, we want to make you realize no matter where you live in the coastal area adjacent to the sea where the tides flood and land every day, or far away from it on arid land, you greatly depend on the oceans. All we want is to make more and more people feel the ocean, tell what the oceans provide us, how we are polluting them and transforming them from blessings to deadly disasters. Well, Octophin is a hope, Octophin is a dream, and you are the part of this dream. There are more than 150 youths from 10 chapters from Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are working to fulfill this dream by spreading ocean knowledge. We work with the slogan, Know the Ocean. Our goal is to create an ocean-aware planet. Our planet is in a very fragile state. As the scientists assume, we are only a few centuries away from seeing the sci-fi movie scenes that show the world as a destroyed, barren place turning into reality. As Barack Obama said, we are the first generation to feel the impacts of climate change and the last one to do something about it. But no one can save an entire planet alone. The more people we could reach, the easier it will get to accomplish our mission. Oceans are the majority of Earth's surface, and we all now have a basic idea how vast its impacts are. If we want to save our home, we must start with behaving more responsibly to the oceans. We need to unite more and more people on our side, the ocean lovers side, in Octophin's family. So I'm inviting anyone and everyone who is interested and feels the importance of ocean literacy to join our organization and be an Octophin. You can email us at octophin2020@gmail.com. We'll contact you. See you all very soon in yet another exceptional and impactful program of Octophin. Till then, stay home, stay safe, and don't forget to be with Octophin. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir. Goodbye, good morning, good noon, good evening, and good night. Stay safe.